Oh my god, he's going to go around the inside. He's going to send it. He's taking the lead of the Canadian Grand Prix on the last lap. Matt Turner takes the win in a remarkable race. We have teammates coming together. How devastating! And welcome in one and all to the iFormula League Formula 2 Round 11 here from the Red Bull Ring. And I tell you what, this race as always is looking to be a close one. We are now, as we mentioned before, 11 rounds in. We only have 4 more to go and the championship fight is heating up. The Red Bull Ring, currently 9 corners on this circuit, depends on how you count them, but I'm calling it 9. And yeah, I mean, in general, the corners themselves quite tricky, usually very deceptive, especially turn 1. Got to make sure you can get a really good run through turn 1 to set yourself up for the long straight into arguably one of the best overtaking opportunities on the circuit, turn 2 or 3, depending on how you count them. Obviously, there is a little turn before turn 3 that I believe the moto drivers count as a corner, but we in the Formula cars take it flat and it's nice and easy. But turn 3 definitely deceptive, off camber as well, so you need to be careful when getting on the power. And in general, this circuit very fast, very flowing, and the lap times looking to be around about 118s, maybe 117s in qualifying, depends on who we can see putting in laps. But before we get into who is currently setting laps, let's take a look at the current Formula 2 standings so far. Chris Byram leading the way from Cesar Cabral, who is then leading the way from Lewis Archer and Carlos Kittel following behind in suit. Ivan Bothkamp then a little bit further off with Frederick Larsen, who is racing today, in 6th position. Alex Gutknecht having retired from this season due to IRL racing commitments, so I believe it is Eystein who will take his place there for the Lumos guys. And then Eystein currently 9th position on the standings with Lewis Colon above them, so Eystein doing a pretty good job as a stand-in so far, and we'll have to see if that continues on in the way that it has been going. Daniel Thomas there rounding out your top 10, and in terms of championship fights, I think Chris Byram sitting on a pretty comfortable lead right now from Cesar Cabral. Obviously, that could all change depending on if Chris has a good race and Cesar doesn't, or vice versa. If Cesar has a great race and Chris Byram DNFs, then it's looking as though this championship might then start swinging back into the way of Cesar Cabral. Carlos Kittel a little bit further behind, but definitely in the hunt for 3rd in the championship, if not 2nd in the championship. Again, needs to finish ahead of Cesar for the majority of this season. So if he finishes well here at Red Bull Ring, then hopefully he can start making that climb to P2. And in terms of the team standings, I think Kuderum basically run away with it now. 249 points compared to GTR Evolution's 166 and Arriga's 150. U-Race Brazil with 146, which is this solo team of Cesar Cabral. So Lumos still doing a very good job. Sorry, U-Race doing a very good job of keeping up with points. Despite the fact that there's only one driver racing for them. Lumos Motorsports as well there in 5th with 82 points, with Orion Racing following in behind in 6th. And then Turning Point Racing 7th, 49N Racing 8th, Gasprilia 9th, and then Whitecoat rounds out your top 10 for the team standings. But let's talk now about the qualifying. Let's take these standings off your screen and get into who is currently the fastest man on track so far, and that would be Ivan Bothkamp, doing an incredible job at the moment to set himself out there in pole position with a 118.019. So Ivan doing a really good job here. Obviously his teammate Chris Byram's looking to also do a great job, so if the two CUDA Works guys can keep together and keep maybe Frederick Larsen at bay, then who knows, we may actually see an incredible team effort here for the CUDA guys to wrap up the championship before the final few rounds. And just as I say that, Chris Byram does go faster, 117.916 for him. And you know, this track, as I mentioned before, very quick, very deceptive. And just as we're on board here with Ivan Bovkamp, let's see what this looks like from his point of view as we head ourselves into turn number 1. And I will say, you've got to be very careful for the sausage curbs in turn 1 on both entry and exit. It's always difficult, and even if you hit them, there is a huge chance that you may end up spinning the rear of the car around. And let's see what type of line he takes here into turn 3, and he's opting for a bit of a tighter line here, which in comparison to some drivers who may go out wide may potentially cause the rear of the car to unsettle itself, but it looks like he's in very big control of this Formula Renault 3.5 machine. And I will say, this is a circuit that the aero of your car is going to be tested, but you also don't want to run too much of it because you've got a lot of long straights around here, and Chris Byram is definitely finding a setup that he likes as he just sets another purple lap with a 117.6. and Ivan currently fighting with this car tooth and nail, so it looks as though it's pretty unstable. You can see from his driver inputs here as we round through the final couple of corners here. So the penultimate corner, try and use as much of the track as you possibly can, but do not go over that red and white curbing, otherwise your lap will be invalid. And let's see, did Ivan improve his lap time at all? And it doesn't look like he did, so I believe he will sit where he is for now, and we may have to wait and see if he can improve at all. But Eistein currently setting a faster lap time for themselves, which puts them a little bit closer to Chris Byram's time, but still a little bit far off for now. I will say, there's not that many drivers here today, only 7 of us, but regardless, the racing is always close here in the iFormula League, so even though we have 7 drivers, I am sure the action is going to be incredible. And what it's going to mean is we've got more time to talk about these drivers and what they're sort of fighting for in the rest of this season, and in general just maybe have a little bit of a review on how these drivers have done throughout this season. Obviously the likes of Carlos Ghosn started the season very strong with a string of podiums, and then unfortunately through the middle season seemingly have dropped off a bit, but managed to recover it, and he's doing a very good job at always making sure he finishes in the points regardless on how his race is going. So Carlos is doing very well at maintaining his positions and maintaining the fact that he is up there as one of the quickest drivers in this league. Sometimes doesn't have the results to show it, but definitely something that he can be proud of this season for sure. Chris Byram, likewise, again, had a very good start to the season and has just sort of continued on form. He's been challenged a few times by a couple of people, Cesar Cabral obviously in Interlagos, one of the most notable ones, and that was still one heck of a race. Interlagos is by far one of my favorite races of the season so far, but yeah, it's very much nice to see how Chris has managed to sort of bring himself up from a position where it looked as though he might be challenged for the championship between the likes of Cesar Cabral, Carlos Ghosn, and then Lewis Archer, and then seemingly have just managed to extend the gaps by just being super consistent. He's managed to just place his car where it needs to be every single race and just picked up podiums almost all the time. I don't think he's had many missed podium opportunities, and when it has, it's usually because of some unfortunate incident. So Chris, again, doing an amazing job this season. And Ivan Bovkamp, I want to say, is probably one of the most improved drivers throughout this entire season. Ivan manages to always impress, regardless on where he is on track right now. I think, you know, when we look at where he was at the start compared to where he is now, Ivan is doing an incredible job in that CUDA Works team. And then Frederick Larsen, I mean, as a stand-in, notable performances. Always seems to find himself up amongst those top guys in this Formula Renault 3.5 car, which as a stand-in, that's sort of that's your job role, right? That's what you want to do. You want to prove, hey, I'm fast. I can compete with these big guys, and I really want a shot at maybe even taking this further, So Frederick, again, has amazing race pace and racecraft, and I think Frederick is a driver looking forward into the next seasons going on. We're looking at him to maybe even take some of these championships and start to really solidify himself as one of the better drivers here in the IFL. I think a lot of the guys here in this F2 league proven themselves time and time again of the fact that they can jump into any of our leagues here, be it F1, F2, or F3, and still perform at a really, really high level. So it's always awesome to see. So just currently in qualifying. Let's see how long we have left in the qualifying session. So we're just getting to the halfway point now. 12.5 minutes gone. 25 minutes for the qualifying session. Then a 5-minute warm-up, followed off by the race, which for this session, I'll just try to find the length of it. I want to say is around about 46 laps. We've got 46 laps here around the Red Bull Ring, so they'll be coming at you very quickly, as we're already seeing sort of qualifying pace of 1:17.6 with Chris Byram obviously setting that lap time, and then Ivan Bovekamp still trying to break into that 1:17s, but very, very close to it. And in practice, I have seen that they are able to push into those 1:17s. And, every time I see these sort of drivers doing these qualifying lap times, I'm always looking to see who is it that wants it most. Who is it that really wants to try and push everything they have? And I think it's really cool to me how, even in the last couple of minutes in this qualifying session, it's never over. There's a driver who could absolutely find that time that they need to get themselves on pole. I think, don't get me wrong, Chris Byram's time of 1:17.6 is going to be very hard to challenge, but if anyone can do it, I definitely think it's the guys who are in top 4 right now. Ivan Bovekamp, Chris Byram's teammate, obviously, maybe on a similar setup. I'm not quite sure how their team works, but potentially they are on a very similar setup in regarding cars, so it would just be their own personal pace, as Carlos Quetal has improved through the middle sector to actually go purple. So let's jump on board with Carlos Quetal and see where he finishes going across the line here. Is it going to be enough for pole position? As we're going to wait and see confirmation of that one, and it is not, but it is enough to get himself into the 1:17s finally, 1:17.939, so good job from Carlos to get into the 1:17s, but unfortunately not able to find those last few tenths of a second. 0.3 separating him and Chris, so 0.3 to find is a big ask, a very big ask, but I think Carlos can do it. Obviously, we still have another 10 minutes of this session, so quite a few laps if you want to put them under your belt. And jumping on board here with Frederick Larsen, let's see what he can do. Improving through the middle sector, but not quite purple time, still a little bit off what he was able to do there. However, going through the final corner, he does improve and go into second place with a 1:17.886. So we're finally starting to see some drivers push and pull their way into Chris Byram's vicinity. And I wonder if Chris is actually now going to start to set some quicker lap times, or has he shown all of his pace already? Is that the fastest lap Chris Byram can do? And if it is, then if Larsen or Quetal can take it from him, then it could pretty much secure pole here, as it doesn't look like anyone else really is managing to find that sort of time. I think Frederick Larsen, as we just see him do, go off there. That is not a great look for Frederick Larsen, but even still, I think here is where we may see some of the times start to improve, slowly but surely. We've got the CUDA guys both ahead of each other. We're on board right now with Ivan Bovkamp. Chris Byram is ahead of Ivan, so we're going to see whether or not Chris is going to be giving the toe to Ivan, and if Chris does, then we can potentially see Ivan here improve on his lap time, potentially by a tenth, 2/10 even. That would be something of, I wouldn't say a miracle. Obviously, you know, they've probably planned it, right? They've probably planned that those two are going to sit here and follow each other as closely as they can and really try to push Ivan to be first and second, so then that way the CUDA guys can get a really good run and Chris doesn't have to think about Gatau, for example, or Larson battling him into T1. And just as I say that, there is the switch coming through from Byram and Bovkamp, so I guess the plan there was to give a slipstream to Bovkamp into turn 1, and then I guess just let Bovkamp get on with his lap and see what he can do. And there did look to be a little bit of locking there going into turn 3, so potentially not up here on his time. He is down through the first sector, but not by much, admittedly. So he is going to be trying to push as hard as he can to make it up here in the second sector. And the second sector, very important to test the downforce levels of your car. There are a lot of high downforce corners here, a lot of long sweeping corners with very, very fast entry and exit speeds. So you got to really test yourself, really test the nerve of the car. Can you take these corners flat? And again, Ivan's still not improving through sector 2. So unless this is just a consistent lap, where we're seeing maybe not the best sectors coming out from him, but we're at least seeing ones that are close enough, then he could still improve. But I don't think it's going to be sort of this earth-shattering lap that he needs to put himself up there into second or third. But we will see as he comes across the line. And I believe that is not an improvement from himself. A 118.324 is not going to be enough. But one man who is looking to maybe try to improve and just say, hey guys, if you want to challenge me this race, you got to try and figure out a way to find any sort of pressure, because I'm on for one right now, is Chris Byram. Going into sector 1 right now, he is, I still say that, but he is down. He is the fastest man through sector 1 so far, and by a significant margin on a lot of other guys. A lot of other people doing 19.4s, 19.5s through sector 1. Chris is doing 19.2s, so he's finding a lot of his time just being way more committed through turn 1, or potentially running slightly higher slightly lower downforce for the straights. So if that's the case, maybe that's where the time is for that CUDA car. Although the middle sector for Chris still looks just as good as everyone else. So if he's managed to find places to trim off downforce but still keep the car stable through the middle sector, then Chris has done an amazing job on that setup. Although not an improvement on his time, so he will probably stay where he is right now. And I believe indeed that is what has happened. 117.7, so still quick enough for pole position if he didn't already have that 17.6. So Chris doing some pretty amazing laps right now and just getting himself in a nice rhythm before the race. And I mean, when you're doing that, obviously you're putting a lot less stress on yourself as a driver. You know, if you can get yourself into a nice rhythm before the race, then you know you can just sort of relax a little and just take the race nice and easy. Obviously, you need to be careful through turn 1. And just as Ivan was improving there, we did see him, unfortunately, get on the throttle a little bit too early coming out of that third corner and spin himself into a wall, which is a bit unfortunate. But Ivan still has enough time to try for maybe 2 or even 3 more laps if he can get out of the pit lane in time. So watch for Ivan to improve. He might not do any more runs. He may just put on the race setup and just use this as an extended warm-up session. Which, if he doesn't think he can go much quicker, then it could be a plan just to set yourself in for race pace, so that when the race starts, you are on it. And we see Chris here using as much of the track as he possibly can. I don't think he could have cut it much closer than that. Otherwise, he would have been very much invalidating those track limits, but keeping it as close as he possibly can and staying very, very consistent. 2 17.7s in a row from him. So Chris is doing absolutely incredible. And I will say that in terms of qualifying, I think obviously with 7 cars, I think Caesar just isn't doing qualifying today. I think potentially a qualifying ban. So Caesar will be starting from, I believe, the back of the grid. But might make for some interesting racing. See if Caesar can actually do anything about starting from the back, so P7. Obviously not quite as far back as, say, starting P21, but hey, we're getting there. Slowly but surely. As I say, even though we only have 7 cars, 4 of them separated by 0.4 of a second, so it's looking like it's still going to be a pretty damn close race. And let's see if we can sort out some of this technical issues for the moment. Apparently someone in chat saying we have no game audio. Not sure why that would be. Let me see if I can find out for you all. We should be alright on game audio. You would have thought it would be good on my end before I start the stream, but here we are. Technical difficulties do happen. They happen to everyone here. I just want to say the amount of laps that some people put in qualifying is absolutely insane. It really is. You're looking at Carlos Ghosn starting his 15th lap in qualifying, and just as I say that, he does abort it. But Ivan going for his 15th lap. So, in terms of lap times, or in terms of just like pure dedication to like getting in that quickest lap, I mean, 15 laps in a qualifying session is a lot. Normally, in iRacing officials, you're only limited to 2 or 3. So, normally, you know, you get 2 shots at it. One is your safe lap, the other one's your gun it. And if you mess up that second lap, then unfortunately, it is all over for yourself. So, you know, you have a lot more chances here in a 25-minute session, but you also have to worry about traffic, which is something you don't have to worry about in iRacing officials. So qualifying works slightly different here in leagues where it is an open track, so if we had more drivers we would see potentially more traffic issues, and that is something we definitely see in the Formula 3 league. With so many cars on track at the same time, it gets very, very ludicrous sometimes with, you know, about 10 cars battling for the same position on track into the same corner every single lap. And, you know, you almost have to look at the drivers and say, hey, come on, boys, what are we doing? You know, can we can we actually try to do something about this? Because, yeah, I want to set my lap here. And, you know, there's like 3 or 4 guys ahead of me that just can't really do anything. But Frederick Larson is now close enough to Chris Byram to potentially be on a lap here as well, I think. Depends on when he crossed the line. We'll see what his pace looks like through Sector 1. I don't think it's going to be quick enough, though. So, unless he can get a ridiculously good Sector 2 here, I think this is how it will be for your qualifying standings. And Ivan Bovekamp, again, improved his lap time, so now we've got the top 4 separated by 0.3 of a second. I'd imagine if Cesar Cabral was qualifying, he'd put himself within that top 4 as well. But definitely a close qualifying. I mean, you know, a 10th difference between P2, P3, and then P4. And then P1 being, you know, 0.2 up is, yeah, it's pretty good. And just as I say that, Ivan decides, you know what, that lap wasn't going to be quick enough. I'm just going to send myself into the nearest wall. Missed the one on pit entry, so, well, I believe there's a marshal post And Frederick Larson also decides that he's going to test his mechanics in the warm-up and see if we can get the cars back out on track. Always got to test your mechanics here in the sim world. They don't normally get a lot of love, so yeah, it's nice to see that you're giving them something to do in the warm-up. And one thing we obviously want to do here in the IFL is thank all of our sponsors that we have for helping us make all of this possible. You know, Butt Kicker, TD Designs, all lovely, lovely people. And then we also need to give a massive shout out to a couple of other sponsors that are helping us with prizes for the various different championships. VPG Sim for providing discounts to our champions of each league, and then SRM for giving away a wheel for F3, so Sim Racing Mods giving away a full wheel for the Formula 3 champion, which is really, really cool to see. Siemens as well, looking to get to work with us on getting some trophies and track pieces made for everyone here in the league, which is, again, really awesome to see. Major's Garage, and then also, as I mentioned before, TD Designs and Butt Kicker always giving us some amazing quality liveries, amazing quality gear for our champions. And then Major's Garage, again, setup work. You find yourself not being an engineer? Check out Major's Garage. They'll help getting you up and pushing with the top guys. Yeah, you don't have to do anything. You just have to sit there, you know, download their setups, and away you go. Easy. It's like having a secondary race engineer. Great. Absolutely awesome. Off track in second to final corner for Ivan. Indeed. It's, yeah, obviously, as we mentioned before, very, very difficult with this track with off tracks. You have to try and stay within those curbings, and the temptation to go wide there is real, because you have the runoff to do it. So we'll see if anyone does that in the race to try and maybe get a little bit of an advantage. Frederick Larson we saw practicing a couple of race starts there in the pit lane. Something as well, manual starts here in the IFL. So again, something that we look at and definitely appreciate is these manual starts. It provides another level of driver ability, I think, compared to a rolling start, and especially in these Formula cars, because some of these Formula cars are very hard to get off the line. So the fact that you can get off the line and settle yourself in very quickly is something that you're going to need to do as quick as possible. Track conditions right now, we're looking at 80 degrees Fahrenheit air temp with a 90 degrees Fahrenheit track temp, which is, as far as I'm aware, not massively hot. I think it's pretty nice conditions for these drivers. I don't think you're going to look at those conditions and be like, well, you know, this is absolutely roasting, you know, these tires are going to die. I think it's a pretty sort of standard track temp. I can't imagine that 90 degrees Fahrenheit is going to be too harsh for these drivers. But it is also slightly cloudy here as well. Not by massive amounts, but there are a few clouds in the skies, which helps to cool off that track temp a little bit. Make sure that 80 degrees Fahrenheit does go to the track, but maybe not as quickly as it otherwise would. And then obviously with these guys burning rubber all over it, then the track temp is naturally going to go up here. But just as an overview for the results in qualifying, let's get that back up on your screen for you. And it was Chris Byram who indeed did set the fastest lap of the race. Oh, I say race, qualifying session I should say. We haven't got to the race yet. My mind's elsewhere. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be nice and close. Even though there's only 7 drivers, I still think it's going to be a close one. Chris Byram obviously there on pole position with Frederick Larson behind him. It was only 2/10 off. Carlos Catal then in third, with being Ivan Bovkamp sitting alongside him. Eystein, who is a stand-in for Alex and is going to take the remaining of the season instead of Alex's place there for the Lumos team, in fifth. Alexander Carver-Robbins there in sixth, and then Cesar Cabral rounds out the drivers there in seventh, and unfortunately not able to qualify. But here it is. Here is the race then, and let's take a look at our grid. Hopefully if I can pop on board with our pole man here, Chris Byram. Put it on pole position, and for the CUDA team, that is something that is going to be absolutely crucial going into the later parts of these races. The CUDA guys are always wanting to put themselves 1 and 2 and take away that team's championship, so they only need to worry about one more thing, which is the drivers for Chris Byram. As we take a look at the grid here, we do have 6 drivers on the grid. I believe Cesar Cabral will be starting from the pit lane, actually, as we do get all the lights come on here. All 5 reds, they are out, and we are green here in Austria. It looks like it was a good start for most of them here, or if not all of them, as Frederick Larson gets a really good start, and then we're going to look further back as Ivan does make that move on Carlos Catal. Carlos Catal maybe getting a slightly worse start. So Carlos is now being hunted, or sorry, is now trying to hunt down Ivan, along with his Auriga teammate Alexander Carver-Robbins, and going here into turn number 3. Is Carlos going to send it up the inside? Doesn't look like it just yet. But it looks like Alexander Carver-Robbins was almost thinking of the move on his teammate there, but backing off just a little bit. So it's going to allow Eystein now to maybe just keep on track of this train so far, and just as I say that, Ivan Bovkamp making a daring move up the inside. I almost saw an Alex Albon move starting out there, and that was very, very close. I'm getting flashbacks to one of the F1 Red Bull races where it ended up in tears for someone going for a move like that, and Ivan Bovkamp gets that move done and shuts the door on Frederick Larson as well. So getting an absolutely insane run there, and no DRS on the first laps, or at least there might be actually, because of the DRS working slightly differently here in the Formula Renault 3.5 cars. You only have 8 uses of it, and you can use them whenever. So provided you are close enough, you can use that DRS however you would like it to, but you have to make it go the rest of the race. So if you use all of your 8 uses within the first 8 laps, as I believe that was Alexander Carver-Robbins there, unfortunately taking himself out and into the dirt, so that is going to be his race a little bit hampered. I don't think he'll be out of the race yet, but it's definitely looking close, as Frederick Larson there going for a very late break and may have even missed his braking zone there, as now Carlos Catal is going to look to try and make the move on him down the straight here, and I believe the move will be all said and done into the corner. Carlos Catal going to give him absolutely nowhere to go. Brakes a little bit deeper as well to really send Frederick Larson off onto the outside of the corner there. And as he's done that, it's now allowing Eystein to get involved in this battle. So the Lumos car is looking to try and make up some positions here, and provided they can do so, we may see a Lumos car finish up near the podium, and especially if Frederick Larson makes mistakes like that. Completely unforced error, and that's going to allow Eystein to just push themselves past and into 4th position here with Frederick Larson. And we know Frederick Larson's quick, so being stuck behind this Lumos car, potentially not the spot he wants to be in right now if we're going by qualifying pace alone. Chris Byram, obviously fastest man on track right now, being in that number 1 spot. So it is one of those things that unfortunately for everyone else, they sort of just have to match his pace right now, and it looks as though everyone's sort of starting to spread out a little bit. We're going to see a battle being developed here between a few cars, and Frederick Larson's going to look to go around the outside here of turn number 3. Maybe do a little bit of a switchback here on Eystein, but Eystein doing a very good job at defending, very late on the brakes. So now Frederick Larson needs to think about setting himself up again here for turn number 4. And does he make the move? It doesn't look like he does right now. It looks like he's just happy to sit behind going into turn 4, and then also having to follow suit through turns 5, 6, 7, 8 as well as we go into turn number 5 here. in the Red Bull Ring. Very long left-hander, that one, and followed off by turn number 6, followed off by then turn number 7, which very, very fast corners, deceptively so, and I think turn 7 is flat for these cars as well, so they shouldn't have too many issues trying to make it around here. And Frederick Larsen is going to maybe just try to set himself up for a move into turn number 3 again. And again, it seems like the moves made here are all going to be through turns 3. I can't imagine seeing many other moves anywhere else. Obviously, we have seen a couple moves into turn 4, and if you are close enough, you can make it work. But I feel like turn 3, with this long straight here, even without DRS, you can really get a good run through the corner here. And then if you're really good on traction, obviously the outside line having a bit better traction there, so it's very hard to overtake someone there unless you have a really good run. So it's just one of those things, I think, that you've got to use a bit of your racing IQ, is what I call it, your racing IQ. It's to know when a move is on and when a move isn't. If you feel like you can get the move on, and you can get into turn 3 ahead on the apex, you can then start drifting out wide, because that corner is now yours. So you can then start drifting out wide, which forces the, your opposing driver, the one you're just trying to overtake, to the rumble strips on the outside, and we know how difficult it is to get traction on rumble strips, especially if they're wet. Thankfully in iRacing, we don't have to worry about that just yet. But again, this battle between Larsen and Eystein doing actually quite well. I think Eystein's doing an incredible job at even just pushing the pace of Frederick Larsen right now, and obviously Frederick, I feel like, could make this happen pretty easily if Frederick gets close enough. So potentially some forms of knowing you're slightly faster but maybe not quite fast enough to make the move, versus also being just a little bit stuck. Obviously through a lot of these corners you gotta worry about the dirty air going in through sector 2, so obviously you can't really make a move there. And then sector 3, it's 2 very fast corners that are blind apexes. So if you try and make a move there, then you're sort of just hoping that the guy gives you enough room. And sometimes it's not always easy to judge as well, so I think Frederick is quite comfortable sitting behind for now and just waiting, seeing whether or not he's faster and where he is faster, and then sizing up a move later on into the race. As it stands right now, though, some of your quickest guys on track are Chris Byram, Ivan Bovekamp, just setting purple sectors there, so Ivan Bovekamp doing the fastest lap of the race. And when I talk about drivers who have improved, Ivan, again, mentioning, as always, Ivan is one of the ones to look at. He's improved massively from race 1. So just even in this short season here that we've had so far, up to round 11, he's improved tenfold. Like, his ability to now keep up with the likes of Chris and Carlos and even Lewis is just incredible. So Ivan definitely deserves a bit of a round of applause after the end of the season, because he's been doing a really, really good job in that CUDA Works car. Obviously, Chris Byram, his teammate, more of the star of the show, I think, so it ends up with Ivan not really getting as much attention as I feel like Ivan even deserves sometimes. You know, Chris Byram's always battling it out near for the lead, and at the moment, the way that it's looking, Chris Byram's going to be clean sailing away today, so if that happens, then who knows, we may end up seeing Chris with a relatively nice result. Just as I say that, there is a battle brewing here for second position between Ivan Bovekamp and Carlos Quital, and with a lap like that from Carlos, 119.009, may have been DRS assisted, but if it wasn't, then Carlos is really starting to push the pace of this Renault 3.5 engine, and hey, who knows, we may actually start to see Carlos put some pressure on Ivan and actually start to prod him a little bit and just say, hey, mate, how's your nerves, you know? Makes a little bit of a mistake there, Ivan. Coming out of turn 3, gets it all sorts of wrong onto the rumble strips, and I told you how easy it was to lose the car. So Carlos Ghitao's going to look to the inside line here, and there is no contact, thankfully, but I believe Ivan's going to have to give up the position. Those two are battling it tooth and nail. Carlos Ghitao does get the move done, but has to be careful of Ivan trying to make the move back, and Carlos just slamming the door in his face and saying, no thank you, I don't want any cold callers today. You've got to try someone else. You've got to try next door, mate, because this position is mine. And Carlos Ghitao gets himself there up now into second for the number 22 car, and he now has to start running away from Ivan, and I think Ivan's now going to be kicking himself a little bit and just going, damn, why did I make that mistake? That mistake was so silly, and something that could have been so easily rectified. As Carlos Ghitao makes a very aggressive defensive move there, but manages to make sure that Ivan wasn't too far behind to where that could have resulted in a collision. Obviously, only one defensive move really allowed, so seeing him weaving all over the place here is a little bit questionable, but I'm also not a steward, so I can't really judge. But Carlos Ghitao is now going to try and do what he's set out to do, and that is run away from Ivan Bovkamp. If Ivan can keep on the back of him here, he might actually be able to use Carlos to push himself up closer to his teammate. And if that can happen, then potentially those two can work together. And if Chris does get caught up by Carlos, then Chris can potentially put Carlos into a position where he needs to go for a move, and maybe the move doesn't work out. He makes a mistake, and then Ivan's right back on top of Carlos and potentially passing him, and then obviously Ivan acts as Ray Gunner for Chris. But we'll have to see whether or not Carlos has the pace so far. If Carlos has the pace, then who knows? Maybe we'll actually see that strategy start to play out. So, and I said it, and I did say it, this race here, and just as I say, Eistein doing an incredible job setting another fastest lap of the race. So Eistein now trying to get involved in this fight for second position. We've got 3 cars here, all within a second. Ivan Bovkamp in the middle of this sandwich between the Origa Motorsports car and the Lumos car behind him. So we have car number 22, Carlos Ghitao, leading this pack, followed off by Ivan Bovkamp in P3, the number 8 car, and then the number 64 of Eistein, who is looking to try and make any sort of positions that they can, and they have dropped Frederick Larsen. So when they actually managed to lose Frederick and stop battling, they would have actually done a great job here to have, you know, just an incredible pace. I think now that they're not looking in their mirrors, obviously Eistein now has a lot more to worry about. Obviously he can see Ivan clear in front of him. He can see Carlos in front of him as well. So if he's counting these guys, he knows he's in 4th right now, so he's counting and looking at, hey, Ivan's currently the car ahead of me. That could be a podium spot, and then the car ahead of them is P2. If I'm quick enough here, and I continue setting the pace that I have been so far, and indeed that is what Eistein does, sets another personal best for themselves, which is also going to be the fastest race lap. We may see a move here from from Eistein to Ivan, but I think it's a few more laps to come yet. I'd imagine we'll see that move either next time by, or we'll see it for lap 12. I can't imagine seeing it this lap, but, you know, depends on whether or not Ivan makes a mistake. We've already seen him make one so far. Thankfully, he got out of the corner that he made that mistake in quite nicely, but maybe that potentially spooked him, because his pace hasn't quite been the same. Set a personal best last lap, however, so... Sorry, not a personal best. It was very close to his personal best, so... Very, very quick lap time regardless from himself. And we're looking now at these top 5 even, setting very similar lap times. However, Frederick Larsen's already been kind of dropped, and when you're out of the DRS train, or you're out of the slipstream train, I should say, then you end up just losing hand over fist in regards to time. And I'm pretty sure Carlos Ghitao right now is pushing the pace and really trying to catch up to the back of Chris Byram, and so far, it's working for him. Carlos managing to reduce that deficit. Was about 4 seconds a couple laps ago, so now already 3.6 seconds and getting smaller by the second. So if Chris is saving tires, I think now's the time to really start thinking about using them and just maintaining that gap. Or potentially the other thing to do is to just chill, wait for a second and just see how close can Carlos get before you need to start thinking about pitting. Obviously, it is a mandatory pit stop here in this league, so if we do see those pit stops come in, it'll be interesting to see who blinks first, whether or not Carlos will value that track position over Ivan. Because keep in mind that the CUDA guys can also use the fact that there's 2 of them to work in the pit stop strategy as well. You know, if Carlos doesn't want to lose a position to Ivan, then he's going to need to pit probably after him, really start to push that deficit. And if that means then that Chris can get a really nice undercut and get out in clean air and really start to push those lap times, then I think we will see some interesting moves being made from Carlos, at least regarding pit strategy. And again, another 2 tenths taken out of Chris Byram there from Carlos Gattal. So once again, Carlos doing an incredible job at just maintaining the pace. And just as I say this, here is someone who is definitely maintaining pace. Eystein trying to go the long way around the outside of turn number 3 and makes it work even before the apex, although they do touch a little. And I'm not sure if any of them has sustained any damage here, but that does mean that Ivan Bovkamp does go through clean sailing, and now Frederick Larsen is right back onto the back of Eystein and potentially going for the move here into turn number 4. Frederick Larsen does take 4th position back due to some contact between Ivan and Eystein, and I imagine that's got Eystein fired up, and Eystein's now looking back onto the back of this Orion car and going, man, I was so far ahead of them, and now look at where I am. I'm right back in it, right back behind where I don't want to be. I'm looking at that Renault Sport logo and just going, damn, I needed to just try and get that move done way before the corner, because Ivan just didn't give, either Ivan didn't give enough space, or those two were just battling so aggressively that unfortunately some contact happened. It was hard to see from that camera angle, so that does mean now Frederick Larsen does have, has gained a position. And Chris Byram is starting to pick up the pace as well. 118.9 for himself. So he's seen Carlos get close and being like, not on my watch, son. You're not going to make this a difficult run for me. I'm going to try and clean sail it to the end. And I'm just going to keep pushing this pace. And you need to really try to catch up to me, because otherwise you're just going to be sat there by yourself with no one to help you. And if you can't match my pace, then unfortunately, this is where we're going to sit, and I will take that all day, because I'm trying to run away with the championship. So Chris Byram trying to do a bit of robbery here in the Red Bull ring. Trying to get as much as he can. Doesn't have fastest lap yet, so if he can steal that from Eystein, then that'll be 1 more point in his favor. I think at the moment, Chris Byram's main goal is to get safest driver and the win. Obviously, the win being priority number 1, as it is most of the time. And Eystein's car there looked very sort of sketchy coming out of turn number 7. And Eystein is coming into the pits. I believe Eystein did get too much damage there from the contact with Ivan and now does have to pit. I'm not sure whether or not it would be a meatball, but potentially that could be Eystein's race done. I believe they'll be able to use their fast repair, so potentially just trying to fuel up to the end. Obviously can't imagine that there'll be a safety car here in this race, so let's jump on board a bit with our leader, Chris Byram, and just see what he's getting up to, see how that car looks. This CUDA Works car going into turn number 4, and then behind him we do see Carlos Gattal in the background. And then Chris Byram's teammate, Ivan Bovkamp, there a little bit further back. So we are seeing the competition around Chris Byram, but it's not quite close enough for Chris, I think, to really worry about him. Hasn't really seen him in the mirrors yet. So Chris is just sort of just continuing on, doing what he can do. Just trying to maintain some sort of pace that can just be controlling for now. And as such, we'll then see Chris hopefully end up with a win here, and if he does end up with a win, then that is going to be very, very good for himself. Obviously, wants to take the win. Wants to maybe even take the championship before Silverstone, which could be something to keep an eye on. So I believe the closest to him at the moment was Cesar Cabral, so Cesar Cabral not being in this race at all. I wonder whether or not that was a conscious decision from Cesar, or whether he just had something come up. Because I can't imagine Cesar Cabral would have just sort of not started the race. But who knows? I believe Chris Byram is going to be looking at this and going, well, if this race continues like it is, I can just relax. Yeah, just drive this car, have a nice Saturday afternoon drive here in some Austrian countrysides. Although, admittedly, you're going a lot faster than you normally would in regular Austrian countrysides. Or maybe not. Depends on how you drive. Obviously, we advocate driving safely here in the iFormula League. Do not recommend speeding. But after you watch all this racing, it's hard not to, right? And Chris Byram definitely setting the pace right now, 119.3, but Carlos Ghosn is starting to manage it. Carlos Ghosn is starting to find that pace again, 118.8. So he's really starting to try and push. He can see Chris Byram, that little speck right in front of him. Get just a little bit closer. Every single lap, just a little bit closer. Maybe not enough to really push, but the other thing as well that you have to think about is if Chris Byram makes a mistake here, Carlos could be all over him. And then if Carlos makes a mistake, Ivan's all over him. And if Ivan makes a mistake, Fredrik Larsson's going to be all over him. So, regardless on where you are right now in the field, if you make a mistake, the driver behind you is probably catching up. I think Fredrik Larsson not so much, because obviously the car behind him has pit. So, makes things a little less interesting for Larsson. I think Larsson's main goal right now is to just try to really push and get in there with Ivan and maybe even make that push to Carlos. Although Carlos's pace right now, currently fastest man on track, so I'd imagine we'll see Carlos continue to just try and push this as much as he can. And depending on how the pit stops work here, obviously the pit entry is very, very, very tight here, so you slow down a lot on the apex of the second to last corner to make that pit entry. And as such, obviously, if you're battling really closely with someone on the car in front of you is pitting, you really need to communicate that you're going into the pit lane, otherwise there could be a massive crash. The other thing as well to note is the fact that pit entry around here, the exit of the pit lane is also quite difficult. Like, surprisingly so. Like a lot of this track, the pit exit is very deceptive. It's one of those things I think that a lot of people don't think about. There's a lot of racing these days, especially in Simland, is very sprint orientated. It's very much quick races that you can just jump in and go and really just commit to just doing one race at a time. You know, you don't have to stress about an entire season's calendar long, you know, months long, where you're battling day in, day out, or sorry, week in, week out with the same sort of crew. And yeah, I think there is obviously a place for that type of sprint racing, but it doesn't mean that you practice everything that racing has to offer, right? You don't practice things like pit entries. Manual starts rarely get practiced as well. And I think that's what league racing really helps you hone in on, is those small things that make a massive difference in the race. Especially a race that's this long. You know, 46 laps. We've already been through 18 of them. Oh, sorry, 17 of them. We will be through 18 of them near the end of this race. Or near the end of this lap. Keep getting those wrong. But Carlos Ghosn is a man on a mission right now. Cut into Chris Byram once again. And if Chris isn't careful here, he's going to have Carlos actually start to push as hard as he can. And potentially, Chris Byram is going to have to worry about that Auriga Motorsports car before the pit window. Or at least the respective pit window for what these guys are worried about. However, one car that is ahead of Chris Byron that might be getting in the way a little bit is Carlos Ghosn's teammate. Now, I'm not saying there's going to be any tricks at play here, but this is something to maybe watch on board with Chris Byron and see how easy Alexander Carver-Robbins makes it for Chris. Does Alex get out of the way here? Down the main straight here, the start-finish straight into turn 1. Does he potentially hold up Chris Byron? Doesn't look like he's going to, but Carlos Ghosn does take fastest lap off the race while hunting down the hard-charging Carlos Ghosn is the hard charger hunting down Chris Byron, I should say. But now, with Alexander Carver-Robbins having been passed by Chris, potentially Carlos might start to try and use him for a little bit of a slipstream. And that way we're going to see these lap times, these 118s from Carlos, get even smaller. Potentially even to the 118.6s. But just as I say that, I believe that was Carlos going off there on the side of the track. And that means that Ivan Bovekamp and Frederick Larsen are now passed. So a little bit of a commentator's curse, unfortunately, as Carlos Ghosn makes a huge mistake there. We didn't quite see it. We might have to jump back and catch that on board. But here we go, going into turn number 4. Let's see what happened with Carlos Ghosn. Was it just too late on the brakes? I think it was. It was just way too late on the brakes, and unfortunately that is going to be huge damage there for Carlos Ghosn, both suspension-wise and front wing-wise, so that is not going to be one happy Formula Renault car. And we're going to see whether or not there is any sort of steering damage to his car, and it looks like there might be. And Carlos Ghosn very wisely straight back into the pit lane, so Carlos does get forced into making a pit stop. And we'll see whether or not Carlos comes out ahead of Eistein. You'd imagine so. Can't imagine the pit lane being too long around here. I believe Carlos is already on his way out, so we may see this tick over. So Carlos is coming out here of the pit box now, and does get overtaken by Eistein, actually. So unfortunately for Carlos, well, that means that you now have to battle for P4 once again, just because of really an unforced error from himself. You know, yes, he was really trying to catch up to the back of Chris Byron, but even still, you've got to do it within your limits, otherwise you end up with a wrecked Formula Renault car, apparently, and a non-optimal pit strategy. Obviously, that kind of forced Carlos's hand to now pit and maybe try and go to the end from here. And he's going to need to be a lot closer than this to Chris when Chris pits to make sure that he can actually battle with him. And just as I say that, Carlos Ghosn does indeed go through and set the fastest middle sector here. A 34.56, so he is definitely trying to make this Formula Renault 3.5 car work as hard as it can and make up for that time loss that he had. But again, I think he's just trying to push a little bit too hard, because he's now made 2 mistakes in those final 2 corners, just running slightly too wide there through the final corner. And then before that, again, just a little bit of a slip up from him. So if Carlos isn't careful, he may end up in a... I believe he's just wiggling either to get the tires up to temp or at least cleaned, or maybe he's just a little bit frustrated in that car. We may see that reflecting in the driving style of him as well. But let's jump back on board a couple of seconds up the road, and when I say a couple of seconds, I mean a whole 30 of them. Frederick Larsen and Ivan Bovekamp, closest battle on track so far. And again, a nice 1 second gap near enough developing between the 2 drivers. Ivan Bovekamp doing a great job at just letting Chris Byron focus on what he needs to focus on. Obviously, Carlos Ghosn was really the only scare, and now that Carlos is gone, Chris can just sort of relax and not necessarily put his feet up, because, you know, you need your feet to drive, but, you know, he can at least start to take it a little bit easier. Manage the tires, manage the pace. Yeah, we're almost getting to the halfway point now, so maybe even think about pitting. Hitting so that you come out in clean air is very important. If you can come out for clean air, then who knows what might happen, you know? If you can come out in clean air after you come out the pit lane, as we've already seen, Carlos Ghosn came out having to battle with Iceteen and has already been dropped by Iceteen, so... Admittedly, Carlos did make a couple of mistakes, but even still, they were kind of forced on him, in one sense. Of the fact that Carlos was just trying to push so hard to make up that time loss. And really needed to get past Iceteen so he could start doing what he's been doing all race long, which is setting the leader pace, effectively. The only one really close to Chris Byron right now on track is our lapped back marker of Alexander Carver-Robbins, who, you know, is doing is doing a pretty good job at just sort of being around, but maybe not necessarily where Alex kind of wants to be. In P6 there, not really having any battles to speak of for himself. This battle between Frederick Larsen and Ivan Bothkamp seems to just be the two of them just sort of swapping fastest lap times right now. None of them really seeming to be getting ahead of any of the others, and as such, it just means that the battle is just going to continue on, I think. You know, I think that Larsen's probably just doing the smart thing right now. Just sitting behind and maybe playing the pit stop game. And if Ivan can play that pit stop game, then we may end up looking at a battle that potentially could be won on just who gets the better pit stop time. Which could be kind of cool to see. Carlos Ghosn now is actually on the back of Iceteen. I believe did try and go for a move, but unfortunately didn't make anything work from it. So this is now your closest battle on track, and one that I believe I've just seen... Is that Frederick Larsen made a mistake there? I'm not sure what happened to Frederick Larsen. So I was saying, people are doing so well, and then they crash. So here we go into turn 1. Did he hit the sausage curb? No, just too early on throttle. And unfortunately, that is what happens. You get too early on the throttle, and unfortunately for you, that is now time lost. Now you have to worry about being 10 seconds behind Ivan and in a bit of no man's land. In the middle of the track by yourself. One man who is not in the middle of the track by himself, however, is Carlos Ghosn. Trying to see if he can figure out any way to get past Iceteen right now. And maybe with a little bit of DRS assistance. And the outside line here going into turn number 4. Does Carlos get the move done? He's going to try and swing it around the outside, and Iceteen leaves all the room in the world for him. So Iceteen being a very respectful driver here to one of the championship contenders in Carlos Ghosn, and Carlos makes that move stick. Although does have to worry about Iceteen potentially coming back at him. Maybe even into turn 1 or even turn 3 on the next lap. If Iceteen can keep up this pace and be as close as they currently are, then there could be a move on here into turn number 3 on this next lap. But I believe that pace is already starting to be set from Carlos Ghosn. And Carlos is going to look to try and run away with it there with a 119.5. So finally getting past and starting to finally put up the pace. Lap 25 of 46 here in the iFormula League round 11 from Red Bull Ring. Only 4 more races left of the championship. And those 4 are a very interesting bunch indeed. We are looking at for your next 3 races, I should say. It's a 14-round season. I thought it was 15. Apparently no, it's a 14-round season. We are looking at Canada, so the circuit Charles Villeneuve, Zandvoort, and Silverstone. Last 3 races of the season. Zandvoort will be an interesting one for these Formula cars. Because remember, the version of Zandvoort that's in iRacing at the moment is the one without the bankings. So there was a lot of changes made to Zandvoort before F1 raced there. And those changes I don't think have been reflected in iRacing yet. And then Circuit Charles Villeneuve, I mean, the Canadian Grand Prix is... I mean, it's one of those circuits, I think, where it's like, for example, Baku, right? You either love it or you hate it, I think, is the consensus with the Canadian Grand Prix track. You see a lot of drivers who absolutely love it. It's so technical and so fast, considering how technical it is. But then you also get a lot of other people who just really don't like the track, just really don't gel well with it. And Silverstone, I mean, I'm a little bit biased towards Silverstone, but I love Silverstone. You gotta love a bit of Silverstone. It's one of the most iconic corners in motorsport. The home of motorsport, some might say. Where it all started. Back in the UK. Although, maybe, depending on how this championship goes, I mean, Cesar Cabral's not going to score any points today, didn't even start the race, so Chris Byram is going to take away 25 of those points if they can finish where they are right now. If they finish with safest driver and fastest lap, that's another 2, to 27. You would then look at him being on 197 points, I believe. No, 194 points. No, 204. My maths is all wrong. 204 points for Chris Byram if he takes away everything today. Which Carlos, I believe, is the only driver within that sort of top 4 who I could realistically see being close enough. In fact, I think maths-wise are only close enough. Are only drivers close enough to really challenge Chris. Carlos, if Carlos finishes 2nd here today, I think that's a result that he needs to still compete in the championship. I think. In fact, I'm going to work it out. Because we may actually be able to crown our champion here of the F2 this race. Which, would be an interesting result. I thought we'd be going down to the final couple of races of the season. I mean, technically, you guess we could do, because, you know, we're on round 11 of a 14-round season. So. You know, we're looking at 3 races left after this one. So a maximum of 81 points. Maximum of 81 points on offer. If you want them. In the last 3 rounds. Now, we take that number. Okay, so you would need a minimum of 121 points at the end of this race to still be mathematically possible to challenge Chris Byram for the lead of the race. Sorry, the lead of the championship. The only 3 drivers who that's possible for right now, who are still in the championship, is Chris himself, obviously, Cesar Cabral, and Carlos Ghosn. Lewis Archer, unfortunately, has retired from this season. So, Carlos Ghosn and Cesar Cabral, the only 2 left. If Cesar continues to race, those will be the only 2 drivers left that can challenge Chris Byram for the win of the championship. But that would require Chris to DNF from all 3 without scoring any points in any of them. Which, I think at the rate that it's going, I think Chris is just going to wrap it up by the Canadian Grand Prix. So, Carlos Ghosn will be on 150 points by the end of the race, if he finishes P2. So, if Carlos finishes P2 here, which is still on, depending on where Ivan comes out here at the pit lane, I don't think it's close enough. I don't think it is. So, I think that mistake from Carlos Ghosn has cost him so much time. And keep in mind, the pit stop time was basically identical between the both of them, and there's an 11-second gap. So, if Carlos wants this championship, he needs to find a miracle from somewhere to take it, to at least take third place from Ivan. Which will, I believe, turn into second place behind Larson when Larson pits. And Chris Byram is now in the pit lane, so we will see where Chris Byram comes out in all of this. I believe he should come out behind Larson, but ahead of his teammate. But we will see. Larson right now is continuing on, so Larson will lead one lap of the race at the very least. And Chris is just exiting now, so yeah, Ivan is almost on the other side of the circuit from him. Well, actually, a little bit closer than I thought. As Chris now does exit, and Ivan is just going into turn 1, so the gap, unfortunately, not quite close enough for Ivan to maybe steal some of Chris's thunder. And I believe that is Alexander Carver-Robbins now who has entered the pit lane and has retired from this race. So we are now down to 5 drivers left. And right now, Eystein is trying to put some pressure on Carlos Ghosn and push Carlos's points deficit to Chris down even further. And I believe if this continues, then we may actually see Chris be able to wrap up the championship very, very early indeed. Obviously, after the Canadian Grand Prix, only a maximum of 54 points on offer, so there'd need to be a 54-point deficit after Canada for Chris Byram to have ended up with the lead of the championship. So, doing some quick maths here, let's see if we can figure out if Chris Byram wins this race and gets the maximum amount of points, which would be 27. So, fastest race lap, which he doesn't have at the moment, keep in mind. But he's probably going to go for it. And then safest driver, which I can't actually check on right now. He'll be on 204 points. Now, if he then finishes Canada, say, second, he'll be on 222 points. Now, I believe Carlos, if Carlos finishes third here, he can pick up 147 points. If he then takes the maximum amount of points at Canada and Chris finishes second, you're looking at 48. Yeah, 48-point difference. So Chris would need to win Canada to secure himself, or pick up fastest race lap and safest driver's points in both this race and the next to secure the championship while finishing second. So if Chris picks up 20 points from Canada, he will be the championship winner. And this is provided Carlos Ghosn wins, keep that in mind. So, Carlos, the pressure is on you to win this championship from Chris Byram. I don't think it's looking very likely with how Chris Byram's pace has been this season, but Who knows? Maybe there's an upset coming. All we'd need is a couple of DNFs and Carlos Ghosn to be uncontested for the lead of the races. But we also see, unfortunately, Carlos making a few mistakes, which I believe has just cost him the championship, to be honest. I believe he's just not really been close enough now. And it's really sort of died off the championship from this point. Although, I will say, Fredrik Larsen is going very long on these tyres. I'm not sure whether he's trying to just set a record for longest time on a single set of tyres in a Formula Renault 3.5 car, or what, because he just realizes there is a mandatory pit stop, right? Fredrik Larsen is currently on his 34th lap on these tyres. Still hasn't made a pit stop yet. Very much needs to before the end of the race. Yeah, he has 12 laps to do it, but might as well get it over and done with now. Everyone else is pit. You might be able to get yourself into a nice little battle. Or maybe that's what he wants to try and avoid. Although, from the look of his pace, actually, last lap being a 118.8. This lap maybe even being better. Maybe Larsen feels like he doesn't need to right now. Maybe he can just continue to push. And if Larsen can continue to push this pace, who knows? Maybe he can take second from Ivan. Obviously, he would need to be doing one stellar job. 118.4, that is one way to do it. 118.46 from Fredrik Larsen is, yeah, that is a quick lap. And our fastest race lap, so when I was talking about Chris needing all these fastest laps and safest driver points and all this, I mean, if you can take it away in the form of Chris Larsen, then... Not Chris Larsen, Fredrik Larsen, I should say. Combining the two names there. And I suppose it doesn't really matter. Although, this battle now between Austrian and Carlos has heated up. I'm not sure whether or not there was an issue, or whether or not Austrian has just managed to just catch up right to the back. That gap was steadily closing. Wasn't quite keeping on top of that one when I was trying to work out the maths between Chris and Carlos for fight of the championship. As I say, maybe Carlos is a little bit too far back now to really think about the championship, especially not getting the results that he would like today. And Carlos, again, needs to kind of push the pace a little, because otherwise Fredrik Larsen might come out ahead of him. In fact, probably will come out ahead of him. And unfortunately for Carlos, that will mean you're finishing 4th. Which, when we're talking about the fight to the championship, is not really where you want to be. Obviously a 54-point deficit needed after Canada to not have enough points left to finish in the championship contention. So Austrian's looking to maybe cause an upset here and send Carlos Ghosn home. A little bit empty-handed. Although Carlos is starting to pick back up that pace. 118.8 that last lap. A 10th slower than what Fredrik Larsen was able to do. So keeping up with the leader's pace at the very least. So hopefully Fredrik doesn't get that sort of jump that we were looking for. Although I do believe that one man who will be getting a jump when Fredrik pits is Chris Byram. Obviously at the moment only 12 seconds separates the two of them, so definitely not quite close enough for... sorry, not quite far enough gap for Fredrik to pit safely under that one. 17-second gap there between... just as I say that, Fredrik Larsen's doing an incredible job. Fastest lap of the race with a 118.29 on 37-lap-old tyres. Well, I suppose that lap would have been 36-lap-old tyres, but still, 36-lap-old tyres and you're setting fastest laps of the race. Fredrik Larsen's on another level right now. He's decided, you know what? I'm a little bit bored in this race. Let me just, you know, do some quali laps. I wanna push the pace. Feel that, yeah, I made a mistake, but hey, I'm here. I'm fighting. I want to collect some points at the end of the day. You know, that is what he is doing indeed. 23-second total gap. I suppose 24-second gap, it says on your screen there, between himself and Ivan. And I tell you what, if Frederick Larsen actually can hold out and keep this pace, he might actually get second place from just this strategy alone working out. So he might actually take second place from Ivan. The 118.5, he's definitely looking to do it. Only a few more laps left of this Grand Prix. 8 more to go, including this one. In fact, I believe this one would make it 9 more to go, if we included this. I'm not that great with mental maths, apparently, today. Yeah, Ivan's pace right now, 119.3, I don't think is quite quick enough. Depending on how long the pit lane time here is, I'm gonna guess it's somewhere around like 27 seconds. Maybe 30 to push. I believe if you had a 30-second gap, you could probably come out ahead and it would be fine. Because you're stationary for 8 of those. You're actually traveling through the pit lane at like 38. 38-second pit lanes. But imagine having about a 30-second gap will be enough for Larsen to then think about coming into the pits. Which, if it's a second a lap, that's going to be cutting it close. He's going to be pitting with 2 laps to go. But hey, if that's the race that he wants to try and have, I mean, more power to him. Really, the only choice he has right now to get second from Ivan Bovkamp. Because I believe even if he pits now, he's on pressure rubber. But is that rubber actually going to be quicker for him? Because right now, he has an incredible pace. 118.3 last lap. 118.2 best lap. He set the fastest lap of the race so far by 0.4 of a second over Carlos Quital. And he's just gone quicker in Sector 2. He's just set a purple Sector 2. So, Frederick Larsen has decided, I don't need my tyres at the end of the race. Like, I can just take fuel, probably. Well, I believe we also have a mandatory tyre change. But if it was possible, he could probably just take these tyres all the way to the end right now. He's certainly going to try it. A little bit of a slow Sector 1 from him. So, not resulting in the fastest lap time just yet. The man who is on for potentially the fastest race lap is Carlos Quital. Middle second sector once again, 34.51 versus 34.67, I believe, is our next fastest in Sector 2. So depending on what Carlos Quital can do here, we may see a new fastest lap, but unfortunately not 118.6, so not quite close enough for Carlos Quital. And I will say, this is almost going to turn out into a bit of a time attack session here for Frederick Larsen. Can he set some of the fastest laps of the race to put himself in a position where when he comes out of the pit lane, he's ahead of Ivan Bovkamp? That is his goal right now. I believe Larsen will come out ahead of Carlos Quital. I believe that to be true. Because I can't imagine you're losing 32 seconds in the pit lane here when the pit lane is only 38 seconds in length anyway. As I say, I reckon you'd probably lose about 30 25 to 30 seconds in the pit lane. Depends on the car, I think. Obviously, if the car is slightly slower overall lap time, I think he would lose less time in the pit lane. For example, if this was like an MX-5, he'd lose a lot less time in the pit lane than these Formula Renault cars, because they're so quick. And obviously the pit lane speed doesn't change based on your car class either, so... Ivan has now dipped into the 118s himself once again, so Frederick Larsen is starting to push that pace once more, and Ivan is starting to respond and potentially get himself into a place where if Larsen pits now, as I believe he will be, so Frederick Larsen comes into the pit lane, and this will be your battle for second position. Where does Ivan Bovekamp come out in all of this? Let's see. Chris Byram will go past us here. And there he goes. Now, where is Ivan? Ivan's just coming into shot there in the background. So this is going to be close. Is Frederick Larsen going to be able to come out ahead of Ivan Bovekamp? And I believe he will by a significant margin. He extended that gap by 5 seconds. And that puts him 7.6 seconds behind Chris Byram. Which, compared to where he was, that is one hell of a job from Frederick to push. Now, 4 laps to go. I can't imagine Larsen's going to challenge Byram here for the win, but I mean, if Byram makes a mistake, it gets spicy. We've seen Larsen's pace be absolutely incredible. So if his next pace can be that quick, or maybe even faster, this is going to be one heck of an ending from Frederick Larsen here. But we have given a lot of screen time to today, but probably rightly so. There will be cold tyres on this outlap, but you'd imagine they'd get heated up before the end of your first outlap. At least you'd hope so. So let's see what Frederick can do here into turn 1. Is he going to try and push it, or is he just going to settle here for second position in hopes that Chris doesn't try anything? And Carlos Ghitao did try and make a move there for fastest lap of the race, doing a 118.31, so 0.02 tenths off from getting it. He was close. He was close. Carlos Ghitao's trying to pick up the pace. Maybe a little bit too late now, but nice to see him at least still trying to give it something. At least try and get a couple more points back, because I believe he is not going to be finishing here on the podium. I believe we will get a Kudo 1-3, and then Frederick Larsen here in second position. So, unless Chris Byram makes a mistake, I believe this is the order we will finish in here with 3 laps to go. But let's see what this pace is from Frederick Larsen on these new tyres. These new shiny Formula Renault 3.5 Michelin tyres. Chris Byram with a 118.9. What is Larsen's first lap? I believe it will be quicker. 118.783, so not quite fast enough. I mean, fast enough, you'd be looking at Larsen doing 117s. Maybe even quicker than that, actually. I believe 116s is what would be required, and we didn't even see that in qualifying, so Frederick Larsen not quite close enough to Chris Byram to really make any more moves. Unless Chris makes a mistake. Which I don't think realistically is going to happen. I think Chris Byram is pretty comfortable where he is right now, and he's just going to look to cruise it on home. He knows Larsen's quick, but I think even if you dropped a second or two, if you're just cruising in sort of the 19s, for Chris, I think that would still be more than quick enough to come home with the race win. really an untroubled race win for Chris Byram here today at the Red Bull Ring. And sort of what he needs to end out the championship, I think. Just take it home by Canada and, let's say, just maybe use the last couple of races to just try something a bit new, maybe with the car setup, and see if you can experiment. And obviously you've probably already won the championship by that point, so you can just try different things and see if it works or not. Would be a shame if Chris Byram wins the championship and doesn't turn up for the last few rounds. I believe he will, but would be a shame if he didn't. But Frederick Larsen is still trying to push the pace of Chris Byram, but I think Chris is, as I say, just sort of settling in now and just finishing up with, again, a pretty dominant performance. We haven't really seen Chris Byram much because, in all fairness to him, there hasn't really been much to talk about. Chris has just sort of got out to a lead and stayed there. Wasn't really troubled by anyone. Frederick Larsen, however, having to make his way up through the field a few times. So Frederick had some pretty good competition. A pretty eventful race for himself, and then Ivan Bovekamp making up +1 from his starting grid. The only mover, actually, off the starting grid. So here we go, on to the final lap of this race. Chris Byram looks pretty untroubled, it must say. And you know, I think Chris is going to be happy with the results, obviously. Race win is always great. Even though there wasn't that many people maybe to race with today, he's still going to take every race win he can get, I imagine. Maybe with a little bit of help from the other CUDA guys and girls, he can cruise this one home for a CUDA eMotorsports victory. Again, that CUDA Works team. That very striking to a Lotus livery. Well, I say very close to a Lotus, same sort of colour scheme with that black and yellow, but adding its own little stripage there on the side as well to combine all sort of flavours there for the CUDA team. But here he is, Chris Byram, coming home to win the Red Bull Ring, the Austrian Grand Prix, and almost take home the fastest lap of the race. But this man on your screen, Frederick Larsen, did do a good enough job, unless Carlos Ghitao can really push, make something of it. But I don't think he can. I believe that will be all she wrote for fastest lap. So Frederick Larsen does get fastest lap point. Carlos Ghitao maybe a little bit annoyed with himself for that little mistake that he had that cost him here. But that will be all she wrote, at least as far as the race goes. And let's take a look at the unofficial race results, just in case there are any penalties, but I can't imagine there will be. Obviously, Cesar Cabral not starting the race, and Alexander Carver-Robbins retiring relatively early on. Eystein there for the Lumos eMotorsports team, bringing home P5 with Carlos Ghitao in P4 after an unfortunate result for himself. Ivan Bovekamp for the CUDA Works team, bringing home P3 with Frederick Larsen P2, and then Chris Byram, as I said before, taking home P1. And you know, it was a pretty good result, and I believe one that Chris is definitely going to be happy with. But let us hear from our second place man, Frederick Larsen. Let's see if we can hear from him and see what he has to say about it all, because that was a damn good drive from himself. Hey Frederick, great job from yourself today, mate. P2, obviously again for that Orion Racing team, doing an amazing job. And near the end there, we were talking about sort of how long you managed to make those tires last. That seemed like it was an incredibly long stint from yourself, and almost as though you were trying to challenge Chris Byram for the lead of the race by just extending that far and setting such quick laps near the end there. But P2, I believe the best you really could have done, with Chris obviously being out there in front and then you having to battle so hard with a couple of other drivers. But yeah, I mean, still, great result.
Yeah, I feel like that it was impossible for me to overtake on this track. Every time I would get close to somebody on the straights, and then I would lose everything in sector 2 because you don't have that much grip just behind someone else. And to be honest, the new tires, when I got on them, they felt so bad, and I could see that I was gaining all the time by staying out. I think it was Einstein who pitted when he was behind me, and I kind of looked how long does it take in order for him to get out on the track again. And I could just see I was gaining on him all the time, and in the end I just thought, let me just extend this. And then I had that little spin right behind Ivan. So I thought, okay, that this is going to be a P3 at the best. But then again, he pitted early, and I could just see I gained a lot of time on him as well. So I just extended it everything I could. Basically, it was the last lap I could get in on until I ran out of fuel. And the funny thing is, actually, I was trying to put down the fastest lap of the race on the last lap. And I couldn't even manage the lap times I was getting on that old set of tires. So, yeah.
So there you have it. Frederick's top tip for you if you're deciding to enter into the Formula Renault is just don't pit. Just don't pit. No needed. Just sit yourself on tires that you've used through like all practice, all qualifying. The more used, the better, is what we're going with then.
It's overrated to pit.
Yeah. But hey, I mean, regardless, like, that is one of those things, I think, that when you're trying to push so hard, obviously, as you said, the overcut really worked in your favor, and it was really impressive to see, actually. Obviously, you've had that sort of pace difference when you're on those used tires, and then you switch to the newer tires, and for whatever reason they just seem to not get switched on in the same way. And I believe that's something that maybe people can look at in future rounds. Obviously, we have 3 more rounds left of the championship, so the Canadian Grand Prix is next time out, which is not next week, the week after, and then followed off by Zandvoort and Silverstone. So any of those races you're looking forward to?
Did you say Zandvoort?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that track. It's so it's so shit for racing, but I'm just fast around that track, so hopefully I can just qualify P1 and then stay there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Zandvoort's one of those tracks. Obviously, it's the one without the banking now because iRacing haven't scanned that yet. But yeah, I mean, even still, it's going to be really cool to see how these cars would handle the old layout, especially for the F1. I think. Like, did the F1 need to change it around, you know?
Yeah.
But hey, I mean, as I say, it was a great race from yourself. You did arguably the best you could have done, obviously starting P2. Maybe, you know, if you were battling with Chris a little bit more, maybe the spin wouldn't have done too much, but who knows, you know, it's all things to play for. But as I say, another P2, and, you know, you can't really grumble at that.
No, I mean, I still have more podiums here than in F3. I still need that one. So, yeah. Hopefully I can get that one tomorrow.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully driving this F2 car has... sorry, this F3.5 car has helped to get your pace up maybe a little bit in the F3. But, yeah, as I say, is there anyone else that you want to sort of thank at all, or...
yeah, it's just my team, the usual. They're doing great, and yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Well, I'll let you go off and celebrate there, your P2, and yeah, as I say, hopefully we'll see you back again here tomorrow, or maybe a win in the F3. But yes, congratulations, mate, and good luck tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Alright, now we're going to see if we can hear from Chris Byram, who, as I say, seemed to be a little bit untroubled here, so we'll see if we can bring him into the booth and just hear from our race winner. Chris, mate, as I say, pretty untroubled run from you there. in this race. Seemingly just got out to a lead and sort of just stuck it there.
Pretty much same as last race, really.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really grumble at it, to be fair. It's,
No.
you know, putting yourself in a pretty good lead from the championship, and I was trying to do a bit of maths while the race was going on, and from what I've worked out, from as it stands right now, potentially only need to finish second in Canada with fastest lap and safest driver, and you've got the championship sealed up.
Yep, and constructors as well, I think.
Yeah,
So,
obviously.
yeah. No, I don't want to give you the opportunity to ask me the question, how does it feel becoming runner-up again? So I thought I'd just try and get my head down and just win the last of the races left in the season. So,
so is that
saying that,
confirmation? Is that confirmation then that if you do wrap up the championship, then you'll still be racing the final couple of races?
No, I'll just hang up the helmet and leave it, and then let anyone. I can win by a point, whatever. I don't have to turn up. Maybe I'll turn up. Maybe I'll go around in reverse. I don't know. We'll see.
I did say that you might want to try and start out maybe some new strategies and see what you can think of, but maybe racing in reverse is not the one to go for. I'm sure your engineers would be not necessarily thinking highly of it, but as I say,
I still would have picked up points if I was doing it in this race, but no, only 6 people turned up.
yeah, it was a little bit of an unfortunate result, obviously, with Cesar Cabral. I'm not sure, just not even starting. I'm not sure what happened.
He said he was poorly, I think.
Ah, okay. So
thanks to
unfortunate for Cesar. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Cesar. You just made it a lot easier. Nice one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that is one less person that you have to worry about. So, and at least as far as the championship's concerned. But yeah, and
exactly.
I mean, as I say, in terms of the championship so far, I mean, it looked as though at the start, obviously, it was going to be a very close fight, and then Carlos has dropped off a little bit, dropped a couple of positions, and yourself, you've sort of just kept consistency throughout the season, and it's now paying off late. And
yeah, I mean, I wasn't pushing Max, to be fair. My race pace could have been a lot higher, but plan is just to get away clean, try and open up a bit of a gap, and then just try and manage it, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
I noticed Carlos was, I was doing constant 19.1s, 19.2s, and he was around the same, but I think I made a bit of a mistake. And yeah, he was catching slightly, but then he just dropped off. So I don't know if he span or whatever. And then from that point, I just thought, I just want to make sure I keep it on the track. So just take it steady. I know Larson was banging in really, really fast laps, but there was just no point me trying to respond to that. I knew that as soon as he pitted, I would have had more than enough of the gap. And then when he come out the pits, we were doing similar times. And I was trying to save my DRS at the end to get a fast lap. But then again, I don't want to push and throw away points, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Points, isn't it? So I got the safest driver as well. I think I only got 2 incidents in that race. Everyone else got more. So, yeah, it's looking good. Looking good. Extending the gap at the front, which is aim of the game, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, obviously picking up that safest driver point is obviously another point that you're taking away from the likes of Carlos Ghosn and Cesar Cabral. So, you know, the more points you can take away from them, the better. And as I say, it's just going to push you into a result, I think, where you can retire off as Formula 2 champion. Maybe come back next season, who knows? We'll see how it goes. But yeah, at least you'll have the number one at the end of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, depending if I do win it before, then I'll don the number one for the last races. Maybe we'll see. So, maybe a special livery.
That would be cool.
So, we'll see. But big shout out to Ivan as well. Like, one of the first races, he's been able to come back and actually qualify. And he had, we did a little bit of practice yesterday. I've not been practicing much the last few races. I've had a hectic time at work. We did a bit of practice yesterday, and his pace was way better than mine. So coming into the practice session tonight and finding myself ahead, it was a bit of a surprise. But he did awesome, hanging in P2 for a good bit of time, and then dropping to P3. So just a shame he couldn't bang in the fast laps at the end to try and keep Frederick at bay. But you know what I mean? It's more points for the constructors, and Kuda will go and beat in F3, F2, and then F2 again. So holding on to that record.
Yeah, and it's really cool to see, you know, obviously you guys at Kuda seem to have a really good sort of working relationship between all of you, so It's really, really cool. And I'd imagine that, you know, yourself and Ivan work pretty closely together to help each other as much as you can to secure, as you say, the team's championship.
And we work with other drivers as well. I mean, we practice together with other teams and stuff, and share information and share setups, and you know what I mean, do it that way. So Lewis Archer's a good advocate for that. He's really, really good at sort of getting on track and getting people set right and helping people with setups, even though the majority of the time we don't end up using each of the setups anyway. We all go a different route, but it's just that unity that we have, which is good. So shout out to him as well for all the help and effort that he gives me, Ivan, and other drivers as well that compete in all the series.
Yeah, and as I say, it's really cool. Like, it's nice to feel like there is sort of that league mentality, but still that like family mentality of, you know, you still want to help each other as much as you can, and yeah, you want to compete, but yeah, you don't mind helping a couple of other drivers if it makes the racing closer, right?
Exactly.
You know, that's at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. Yeah, exactly.
It's nice to run away with it, but at the same time, I mean, it's also nice to have a good battle as well. So,
well, hopefully you can get that in the next couple of rounds. Obviously, we've got the Canadian Grand Prix, then Zandvoort, and then finally Silverstone. So, any of those that you're looking forward to?
Silverstone's a guaranteed win. I'll take the win at Silverstone. Canada, I really like the circuit. It's a bit sketchy though, with some of the corners. And Zandvoort, I think I span there last time. I don't know if we'll have a race. I don't even know if I'll race there. I might not have raced there, so
That'll be an interesting race then.
I'll best start practicing.
Well, you got 2 weeks for to practice for Canada at least, and then another week after that for Zandvoort. So, and then obviously, as you say, Silverstone's already a guaranteed win, so I wouldn't worry about that one.
Yeah, I do love Silverstone. I do love Silverstone, but no, it's a couple of weeks. We're doing the majors 24-hour Le Mans as well, so that's going to be
well, good luck in that
for me and Ivan. So we'll have to have someone cover our stints while we hop out the car and come into IFL and then dip off again.
What's the car? What did you choose?
LMP2.
Oh, nice. Good old Dallara LMP2. I love a bit of endurance racing. Yeah, massive advocate for it.
We've been quite successful in the iRacing special events. We took third at 24-hour Daytona.
Nice.
And then we took P1 in the 12 hours of Sebring, me and Ivan.
Nice.
So hoping that we can do something here, but yeah, we're having a good start with the endurance racing. So
yeah, it's always really, really absolutely loving the. But yeah,
that's the main reason I come to iRacing, to be honest, is to do that. That's what I'm all about.
I think that's the same for a lot of us in iRacing.
Yeah. Formula isn't my first choice. I prefer GT cars.
Yep.
And then the LMP cars and endurance and stuff. But yeah, Lewis Archer found the league and he was like, oh, come do Formula with me. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then it's just stuck, and I'm not too bad at it, so it's all right.
Yeah, not too bad. Takes home the win here today at the Red Bull Ring. But before I let you go, Chris, is there anyone else you'd like to thank at all?
Just Ivan, teammate, and then everyone else that helps it run smoothly. It's good effort from everybody.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. But hopefully we'll see you again here next week on the podium. And yeah, hopefully you enjoy yourself a nice evening, and we will see you. So, hopefully again next week.
Will do. Take care, mate. Take care.
Yeah, awesome. Cheers, mate. And last but not least, we will get Ivan in here for a podium interview. P3, and let's hear it from the man himself. Hey, Ivan, P3 from yourself. Pretty good result, actually. So, managing to gain on your P4 start. An unfortunate little bit of battling with yourself, and I believe it was Eystein. I believe there was a little bit of contact there, but overall, pretty good racing from yourself. And I mean, you know, you did an amazing job trying to battle with Frederick Larsen as well. Unfortunately, near the end of the race, Frederick's pace was a little bit too quick. But hey, I mean, at the end of the day, you take home a P3, and for the Cuda Works team, I think that may have settled the Constructors' Championship. So yeah, I mean, doing an amazing job for the guys.
I didn't realize that actually, to be fair. But yeah, it's been a long time, and I'm glad to be on the podium again. And it wasn't the pace today. The first lap was good, was insane, but yeah, last season my pace was way better. And I had a busy day today, so I didn't prepare that well. I wish I did, man. I wish I did this time. But yeah, P3, man.
Yeah, I mean, hey, P3 is still great, you know, like P3, you're still taking home points for the team, you're still pushing yourself up further into the standings, and, you know, it's one of those things I think that you can always be happy when you finish on the podium, right? So
Yeah, of course. But yeah, last season, my race at Austria the pace was good. Every lap was good, and I didn't have that today, you know. And the first lap I was in P2, so yeah, that was a 1-2, and now we only had that in Barcelona, you know. So yeah, it was the second time this season. I really wanted to push, you know, but yeah, I didn't have it today, so I'm really happy with the P3.
yeah, I mean, as I say, like, your start of the race was absolutely incredible, and then, you know, as you say, started to die down near the end, but still an amazing result for P3, and looking forward as well into the championship later on. You know, we do have what we could class as a home circuit for you, I believe, in Zandvoort coming up. So yes. I mean, that's got to be one you're looking forward to, surely, right?
Yeah, of course. It's P1, so yeah, I can't wait to go there again. Last season I had the qualifying, so there was a P4 where the pit lane starts. I had to serve a lot of penalties, and still I managed to get a P4. So yeah, if I get a good qualify, I definitely go for P1. So can't wait for Zandvoort.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we've got Canada in between then, and then Silverstone as well to round out the season. So, you know, the calendar's coming to a close on the championship, but still a couple of really, really cool tracks to come. And as you say, maybe if you can get a win there at your home Grand Prix, that'll be really cool. And something that, as I say, I imagine you're looking forward to. But one thing we did hear about from Chris that I want to just ask you a little bit on is, obviously you guys are doing the Majors 24, I'm pretty sure I heard from him.
That's right.
And I take it you guys are, you know, you're preparing for that one, and that's 2 weeks time? Correct me if I'm wrong.
3 weeks from now, so yeah, we're getting ready for that, and we're ready for the setup because we're struggling with the setup at the moment. Tuesday we get a new setup, so yeah, we're gonna win that as well.
Nice.
That's what we win the weekend, so.
Yeah, as I say, it's going to be really cool to, as I say, we'll try and cheer you on here from the IFL and see how you guys are doing in the Majors 24, and obviously then to see you, I believe that will be the race weekend for Zandvoort, so maybe if you can get a win at Zandvoort and then a win in the Majors 24, hey, it would be pretty cool for yourself, so.
That would be great, and the constructors, could it be better if we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, anyway, is there anyone else you sort of want to thank before we let you get off?
I really want to thank Kuda. Last season I was right for the Evo team, and now I'm right for the Works team.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm really glad that I had that opportunity. It wasn't my best season, but yeah, I want to thank Kuda. I want to thank Chris for all the hard work, and we're almost there. Yeah,
as I say, I've noticed your progression through the season is definitely, as a driver, you seem to have just gotten faster and faster as the season has gone on. So really, really cool to see you now sort of stepping up and as I say, fighting amongst to get P3s and really pushing these big boys. So yeah, it's really, really cool. And obviously, if you're here again next season, can't wait to see more of the same. Maybe even a couple more wins under your belt as well. So that'll be really cool.
I'll be in qualify.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We can't wait to see it. But hey, I'll let you get on. You can celebrate with Chris and maybe figure out whether or not you guys have won the Constructors' Championship or not, because I'm pretty sure it's on a close, but it might be a little bit close.
We're definitely gonna do that. And yeah, cheers, man.
Yeah, see you later, mate.
See you later.
And there it is, all done here from us in the IFL for round number 11 here at the Red Bull Ring. And again, despite the fact that we didn't have that many people, it was still one hell of a race, and we can't wait once again to see you all next week out as we go racing in Canada. But tomorrow we do have the Formula 3 and then the Formula 1 followed after that, so make sure you tune in because that F3 race is going to be mental as always. And then the F1, I mean, it's just a spectacle around any circuit, isn't it? So make sure you tune into those, follow us on all of the social medias, and we can't wait to see you racing here in the iFormula League in the future. But for now, this has been Alyssa Long, your commentator, and